the Hope Diamond. For centuries, a diamond the size of a plum has traveled from hand to hand, leaving destruction in its wake. The Hope Diamond, weighing 45.52 carats and glowing with an otherworldly blue sheen, was first documented in 1668 when a French merchant named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier acquired it from a mine in the Golconda region of India. Tavernier claimed the stone was cursed, said to have been stolen from a statue of the Hindu goddess Sita herself, wrenched from a sacred temple with deliberate sacrilege. He told anyone who would listen that the theft had marked the gem with divine retribution, that the gods themselves would exact payment in blood and ruin. Within years, Tavernier lost his fortune and reportedly died under mysterious circumstances during a voyage at sea, his body never recovered. The diamond passed through the hands of French royalty, whose descendants fought bitter succession wars. It moved to British collections, accumulating stories of bankruptcy and madness with each new owner. Eventually, it reached American millionaires who discovered, too late, that wealth could not protect them from the curse. Nearly everyone who possessed it experienced sudden, unexplainable misfortune that defied rational explanation. Some owners went bankrupt overnight, their industries collapsing without warning. Others suffered devastating illnesses that medical professionals could not diagnose, wasting away despite best efforts at treatment. A few reportedly took their own lives, unable to bear the weight of the curse they believed they carried. One owner, a banker named Henry Thomas Hope, gave the diamond its modern name, but also bequeathed his family's tragic legacy to history. His descendants battled madness, addiction, and financial ruin across generations, as if the stone fed upon their misery. The gem seemed to operate by its own malevolent logic, striking down those closest to its holder with as much ferocity as the holder themselves, as if indiscriminate in its destruction. Scientists examining the Hope Diamond found nothing unusual in its atomic structure, nothing that might suggest danger. The blue color comes from trace amounts of boron, a perfectly explainable phenomenon in diamond formation that occurs naturally. Yet the documented history of misfortune spanning 3 centuries across multiple continents remains impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence or selective memory. Museums now keep the Hope Diamond behind reinforced glass and special climate control systems, treating it more like a dangerous prisoner than a precious jewel worthy of display. Curators have reported strange occurrences around its display case that defy simple explanation through conventional means. Lights flicker when the stone is positioned a certain way, according to multiple independent witnesses who have documented the phenomenon. Security systems malfunction near its vicinity with disturbing frequency, cameras failing and alarms activating without cause. Devices that function perfectly elsewhere fail mysteriously when moved near the exhibit, including backup systems and redundant equipment. Whether these are genuine phenomena or psychological projection remains unclear. But the pattern persists consistently across decades of careful observation by different people. If a curse is nothing more than concentrated human belief and fear manifesting through psychological mechanisms and collective intention, then the Hope Diamond has certainly earned its dark reputation through centuries of reinforcement and accumulated tragedy. The Bassano Vase. In the vaults of a private collection somewhere in Europe sits a silver vase so dark in its history that even its current owner allegedly refuses to display it, refuses to even look at it directly for extended periods. The Bassano vase, crafted in 15th century Italy by an unknown artisan whose name has been deliberately obscured from historical records, arrived in the modern world with a chilling inscription etched into its base. Beware, this vase brings death. Every documented owner of the artifact, without exception, has experienced untimely and inexplicable demise within a predictable time frame after acquiring it. The vase was first brought to light by an Italian family, whose patriarch acquired it as a curio from an estate auction. thinking little of the inscription until events began to unfold. Within months, he was found dead in circumstances that modern authorities would classify as undetermined, his body displaying signs of trauma that matched no known accident or illness pattern. His widow, terrified and desperate, immediately sold the vase to escape what she believed to be a family curse, passing the burden to another unsuspecting collector. The next owner, a wealthy aristocrat with connections to the Italian nobility, kept it for precisely 2 years before dying under conditions so bizarre that newspapers refused to report the details, citing public disturbance and the potential for mass hysteria. A subsequent owner kept a detailed journal of events surrounding the vase, documenting the escalation of strange occurrences with meticulous precision. His writings described increasing paranoia, vivid nightmares that seemed to share common themes among those living in the same house, and physical symptoms that medical professionals could not diagnose or treat despite exhaustive testing. His final entry, written in an increasingly erratic hand, with words sometimes crossed out and rewritten multiple times, simply stated, "It grows heavier each day, though its weight never changes. I can feel it watching from the next room." He was found dead 3 days later in circumstances nobody has ever adequately explained. Scientists who have examined the Bassano vase with proper precautions found nothing obviously toxic or dangerous about its composition at the molecular level. The silver is pure, the craftsmanship exquisite and far beyond what typical 15th-century eerie artisans normally produced, the weight and dimensions unremarkable and consistent with vessels of similar age and purpose. Yet the vase reportedly generates measurable electromagnetic anomalies that fluctuate in patterns that correlate with proximity to living humans, particularly those who have recently acquired possession of it. Some researchers have theorized that ancient artisans may have discovered methods of infusing objects with intentional curses through symbolic ritual and geometric precision, encoding harmful intent directly into matter. Others dismiss such theories entirely, attributing the vase's reputation to elaborate hoaxes and selective historical record-keeping. What remains undeniable is that no scientist willing to stake their reputation has successfully broken the pattern that surrounds this object, or explained the mechanism by which it operates. The vase has been offered to multiple museums, and all have refused it without offering public explanation. Its current location is deliberately obscured by those who understand its history and prefer not to see the curse spread further. The Busby Stoop Chair. In a museum in Yorkshire, England, a wooden chair sits cordoned off behind a thick barrier, accessible only to researchers under specific conditions and with proper documentation. The Busby Stoop Chair has a reputation so dark that casual visitors are actively advised against approaching it without proper psychological preparation, as if proximity itself poses some kind of risk. The chair's curse dates to 1702, when a man named Thomas Busby was sentenced to death for the murder of his employer in a case that shook the entire region. On his way to execution, Busby was offered a final meal and entered an inn where he sat in this particular chair to share a final drink with his friends, treating the moment almost ceremonially. As he was dragged away by guards toward the gall house, he reportedly turned back one last time and declared a curse upon anyone who would dare sit in the chair after him, speaking words that witnesses claimed seemed to resonate with supernatural intensity. He said that death would find them, swift and terrible, and that his curse would prove far more devastating than any legal punishment ever could be, that divine retribution would exceed human justice. Over the following decades and centuries, mysterious deaths accumulated in connection with the chair with almost mathematical precision. A serving maid sat in it and died that same week in what was ruled a sudden fever of undetermined origin. A farmer and his wife both sat simultaneously as a kind of test of the curse's authenticity and were killed in a farm accident within days when their wag overturned under circumstances nobody could quite explain. Soldiers during wartime sat in the chair as a dare to test their courage and were killed in combat shortly after, their deaths coming almost too conveniently to attribute to random chance. A mechanic sat in it and died in a freak accident when machinery inexplicably failed in ways that engineers said shouldn't have been physically possible. More than 60 documented deaths have been connected to sitting in the Busby stoop chair over the past 3 centuries, each following a pattern similar enough to be disturbing, yet different enough to resist easy explanation. The pattern is so consistent that modern owners simply refuse to let anyone sit in it under any circumstances, making it essentially a historical artifact of cursed wood and deed legend kept alive through documentation rather than use. What makes this curse particularly difficult to dismiss scientifically is the specificity and consistency of the pattern that emerges across time. The deaths are not random illnesses or generic misfortunes, but specific accidents and acute events that strike shortly after contact with the chair itself. Skeptics have attempted to explain the phenomena through coincidence and selective memory, but the statistical probability of such a death rate among a chair's users defies conventional probability analysis by orders of magnitude. The chair contains no toxins upon chemical analysis, no sharp edges that could cause infection, no unusual composition that might explain illness or death. Yet insurance companies have refused to cover situations involving the chair, treating it as an immeasurable risk factor, and families who inherited it have spent thousands attempting to destroy it, only to find it somehow survives all attempts at destruction, remaining whole and functional. The Crying Boy paintings. Beginning in the 1950s, a mass-produced printing featuring a melancholic boy with tears streaming inexplicably down his face became ubiquitous in British homes, hanging in seemingly every household across the nation. Tens of thousands of copies were manufactured and purchased by families who found the image oddly compelling, adorning living rooms and bedrooms throughout the country, displayed with an almost ritualistic consistency. Then, in 1985, a firefighter made an observation that would spark decades of speculation and public anxiety about the painting's true nature. He had noticed something profoundly odd during his years responding to house fires throughout his region, a pattern that seemed too consistent to be coincidental or explained by simple chance. The Crying Boy paintings, in nearly every case he investigated, survived the flames completely untouched and undamaged, while everything else around them burned to ash, reduced to rubble. In house after house, fire after fire across different neighborhoods and different years, the painting would remain pristine in the rubble, its colors undimmed and its surface uncharred, undamaged by heat or smoke that had destroyed furniture, walls, insulation, and everything else combustible in the home. When the Sun newspaper published the firefighters' observations in a sensational front-page story, public panic erupted across the nation almost overnight. People began pulling the paintings from their walls and burning them in their gardens in mass burnings, desperate to rid their homes of what they suddenly belie. Ved to be a cursed object harboring supernatural properties. Thousands were destroyed in coordinated bonfires across the nation during a single weekend, an extraordinary collective action driven by fear. Yet the mystery of why the paintings survived fire after fire persists without any scientific explanation that satisfactorily accounts for the phenomenon. Fire investigators examined samples of the paint, the paper stock, and the printing materials with sophisticated equipment and found nothing unusual that would account for their extraordinary resistance to heat and flame under laboratory conditions. The varnish composition is standard, the ink formulation unremarkable and indistinguishable from other printed materials of the era. Laboratory tests show that identical materials and samples burn normally when exposed to the same temperatures and conditions in controlled environments. Yet whenever photographs and documentation of fires are examined by independent researchers, the pattern holds true across the entire dataset without exception. Fire crews would find the painting unharmed among the destruction, sometimes the only object in the home not consumed, its frame barely darkened despite surrounding inferno. Some researchers speculate that the image itself, psychologically embedded in the subconscious of those who lived with it for decades, created some kind of protective intention that somehow manifested physically through mechanisms not yet understood. Others suggest the paintings were treated with fire-resistant compounds unknown to modern chemists, compounds that might have been deliberately applied by manufacturers for reasons they never disclosed. What remains is a documented historical phenomenon for which no conventional explanation exists, despite extensive scientific investigation. The Antikythera mechanism. Off the coast of a Greek island in 1901, sponge divers bringing up recovered items from a shipwreck brought up fragments of something that fundamentally should not exist, according to every historical model and conventional understanding of ancient technology. The Antikythera mechanism, encased in corroded bronze and broken across dozens of pieces scattered by time and ocean, would become one of archaeology's most profound mysteries and one of the most incomprehensible artifacts ever recovered. The device, dated through multiple methods to approximately 100 BCE, consists of 30 interlocking bronze gear wheels arranged with mathematical precision inside a wooden box that once contained additional components now lost. It is, by all known evidence and expert consensus, an ancient computer, the first mechanical calculator ever constructed by human hands. The complexity of the mechanism's engineering suggests astronomical and mathematical knowledge that historians insisted, with absolute certainty, could not have existed in the ancient world, that was supposed to emerge much later in human development. The gears worked together to predict the positions of celestial bodies with remarkable accuracy, to calculate eclipses both lunar and solar with precision that would have required sophisticated mathematics, and to regulate the seasons and movements of heavenly bodies with accuracy that rivals modern astronomical tables constructed with computers. No mechanism of comparable sophistication appeared anywhere in the historical record for over 1,000 years, not until the medieval cathedral clocks of Europe emerged in the late medieval period, creating an inexplicable technological gap. Scientists examining the mechanism have found tool marks suggesting its creation using techniques and methods that should not have been available to ancient Greek engineers working with bronze and basic tools. The precision required to manufacture such complex gears, with accurate spacing demands, technology, and knowledge that did not officially exist in the ancient world or anywhere else until the Industrial Revolution. The mechanism's purpose and the knowledge base that created it remain mysteries that fundamentally undermine conventional historical understanding about the pace and nature of human technological progress. How did ancient engineers possess such sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics and orbital calculations? Where did the mathematical framework and engineering knowledge originate? Why does no other evidence of such technology exist in the ancient world? No other computers, no engineering tradition that produced them. The mechanism survived, corroded and damaged by millennia in saltwater, waiting in the sea for 2,000 years to challenge everything modern society believed about human progress and ancient capabilities. The Baghdad Battery. In 1936, archaeologists working near Baghdad excavated something that defied easy categorization and has remained one of the strangest artifacts in historical records since its discovery. A clay jar, approximately 2,000 years old and clearly ancient, contained inside it a copper cylinder and an iron rod, arranged in what appeared to be a deliberate and intentional configuration. The object became known as the Baghdad Battery, and its purpose remains hotly debated among scientists and historians who cannot agree on any unified interpretation. Some researchers argue that it functions as a galvanic cell, capable of producing a small electrical current when liquid electrolyte is poured into the vessel, generating measurable voltage. If true, it would mean that ancient Mesopotamian civilization possessed not only theoretical understanding of electricity, but also practical applications for it, a level of sophistication entirely unsuspected before its discovery. Modern experiments have successfully reproduced the mechanism using dilute lemon juice as an electrolyte, generating approximately 4 volts of electrical current when multiple batteries are connected in series together. This voltage is sufficient for electroplating applications, a specialized process that requires electrical current to transfer metal coatings onto another surface, something that requires both knowledge and intention. Yet no archaeological evidence exists of electroplating being conducted in ancient Mesopotamia during the period when these batteries supposedly operated. No artifacts show the characteristic appearance of electroplated objects from that period or any indication the technology was used. No written records describe such technology or its applications in ancient texts. Furthermore, many archaeologists argue that the jars more likely served conventional purposes, functioning as storage vessels for sacred scrolls or household items like herbs and spices. The scarcity of similar artifacts suggests these were not mass-produced utilitarian objects for common use, but rather rare or singular items whose true purpose remains unknown to modern science. If the Baghdad battery was indeed used to generate electricity, it raises staggering questions about technological capability in the ancient world that fundamentally challenge historical chronologies. What was the electricity he actually used for if not electroplating? How widespread was this knowledge across the ancient world? Why was it entirely lost, leaving no trace in written records or subsequent civilizations? Attempts to definitively answer these questions have proven impossible, despite extensive research, leaving the Baghdad battery as a tantalizing hint of lost technological sophistication whose full purpose and applications may never be understood. The London Hammer. In 1936, a man named Max Hahn and his wife were walking near London, Texas, when they discovered a rock embedded with what appeared to be a hammerhead, partially protruding from its weathered surface. He and his wife took the rock home and carefully cracked it open, and when they did, they extracted what appeared to be a complete hammer, ancient and worn, but unmistakably functional in design. The rock surrounding the hammer was subsequently analyzed by multiple laboratories and dated to the Ordovician period, approximately 400 million years ago. If accurate, this dating would indicate that human technology existed during a time when, according to every model of conventional evolutionary understanding, humans had not yet evolved and would not evolve for millions of years. The hammerhead itself is composed of iron and copper alloy, materials that require sophisticated metallurgical knowledge and technique to produce deliberately. The wooden handle, remarkably preserved and reinforced by the stone's mineral content over time, appears to be of indeterminate age, though wood samples sent for analysis have produced conflicting results that scientists have never adequately explained. Some laboratories dated the wood to several thousand years old, while others refused to provide dates, citing contamination concerns and the impossibility of accurate carbon dating. The hammer's origin and function remain unexplained by mainstream archaeology, which has largely ignored or dismissed the artifact as controversial. Skeptics argue it represents simple misidentification or contamination in the dating process, yet the physical artifact continues to challenge easy dismissal every time it is examined. Where did it come from? Who created it with such precision and intention? How did organic material remain preserved across such vast geological timespans? The London Hammer exists as a challenge to chronological understanding, an out-of-place artifact that refuses to fit within accepted historical narratives and forces reconsideration of human technological history. Crystal skulls. In museums around the world, crystal skulls carved from solid quartz sit behind reinforced glass, their origins shrouded in profound mystery and competing theories that scholars cannot reconcile. The most famous, the Mitchell Hedges skull, was allegedly discovered in a Mayan temple in Belize by an explorer whose documentation and claims remain disputed by academic institutions. Others reside in major institutions like the British Museum and Smithsonian, each one claiming historical connections to ancient Mesoamerican civilizations, despite lack of documented excavation. The skulls are remarkably similar in design and precision to each other, each carved with geometric perfection and anatomical accuracy that seems impossible to achieve without modern precision tools and manufacture. Yet skeletal remains of Mesoamericans examined through carbon dating suggest that pre-Columbian artisans lacked access to the tools necessary to create such precise, uniform objects with such consistency. Detailed analysis by the British Museum in 2004 revealed that the tool marks on the crystal skulls matched modern jewelers' equipment developed in the 19th century, particularly in German manufacturing centers. The scratches and patterns of carving were consistent with rotary diamond polishing tools used in jewelry production, not with hand carving using obsidian or stone tools available to ancient peoples. The composition of the crystal itself proved to be Brazilian quartz, a material completely unknown to pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, available only in South America and Madagascar, far beyond the reach of documented ancient trade routes. Yet people who have held or meditated with the skulls report experiencing vivid visions, prophetic insights, and even claimed healings of serious illnesses that defied medical explanation. Anna Mitchell Hedges, associated with the most famous skull, claimed the object had caused supernatural visions and somehow predicted the assassination of President John F. Kennedy through mechanisms she never adequately explained. She alleged that supernatural powers resided within the crystal itself, that energies and vibrations could be recorded and transmitted through the object across time and space. No scientific evidence supports these claims despite decades of testing and investigation. Yet the persistent reports from thousands of individuals who have encountered the skulls raise difficult questions about the nature of human perception and the power of belief to influence experience and perception. Are the skulls genuine ancient artifacts misidentified by researchers and dismissed too hastily? Or are they elaborate 19th century hoaxes that somehow retain the power to generate profound psychological experiences in those who interact with them? King Tutankhamun's tomb. When archaeologist Howard Carter broke through the sealed entrance to King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 after years of searching, he entered a chamber that had remained completely untouched for over 3,000 years, undisturbed by human hands or the passage of time. Inside lay the mummified remains of an Egyptian boy king who had died mysteriously at a young age in ancient times, his body carefully preserved according to elaborate rituals. The tomb's opening sparked immediate whispers of a pharaoh's curse, popular predictions that all who disturbed the burial and removed its contents would meet untimely deaths, fulfilling ancient warnings. But beneath the curse narrative lies a genuine mystery that science has struggled to fully explain despite advanced techniques and study. The mummy itself shows signs of catastrophic damage that occurred after death and burial, damage that cannot be easily attributed to natural decay. Scorch marks and charring across King Tutankhamun's wrappings and body suggest that the corpse became ignited at some point following entombment, burned while sealed inside the tomb chamber. Researchers now believe that the linen wrappings, saturated with flammable embalming oils and resins, reacted with oxygen somehow when the sealed tomb was opened or through gradual oxidation within the sealed chamber's contained environment. The oils may have spontaneously combusted at temperatures reaching approximately 390 degrees Fahrenheit, essentially cooking the pharaoh's body in ways that would preserve certain tissues while destroying others. This phenomenon explains certain aspects of the mummy's unusual condition, but raises entirely new questions about ancient embalming practices. Why would embalmers deliberately use such volatile and flammable compounds on burial wrappings where they might spontaneously ignite? What knowledge did they possess about chemical reactions and combustion that they might have intended such a result? The mummy remains a biological puzzle, its state of preservation suggesting both sophisticated understanding of preservation techniques and also the unintended consequences of using materials whose properties they may not have fully comprehended or controlled. King Tutankhamun died young, possibly from infection following illness or injuries sustained in a chariot accident, his death sudden and unexpected in someone of royal status. His hasty burial in a tomb not originally intended for a pharaoh created unusual conditions that may have led to the spontaneous combustion observed centuries later during tomb opening. The scientific mysteries surrounding his remains persist despite modern investigation, reminding us that even death and mummification held secrets that ancient civilizations understood, but we have only partially recovered through modern study. The Voynich manuscript. In 1912, a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich discovered a codex written in a completely unknown script that no one in the modern world could read, filled with strange and beautiful illustrations that matched no known botanical or astronomical systems in any documented culture. The manuscript, carbon dated through multiple independent analyses to the early 15th century, consists of hundreds of handwritten pages covered meticulously in an unknown language written in a bizarre cipher or perhaps a completely undocumented script never before encountered by scholars. The illustrations depict plants with remarkable botanical detail that resemble no known species on Earth, yet seem deliberately drawn with intention and accuracy, as if by someone who knew exactly what they were depicting. Astronomical diagrams show celestial arrangements and planetary positions that do not match any known planetary configurations or understandings from any period in recorded history. Human figures, sometimes depicted as naked and sometimes clothed in strange costumes that match no documented historical fashion, appear throughout the text in enigmatic poses suggesting activities of undetermined purpose and meaning. For over a century, brilliant linguists, expert cryptographers, and artificial intelligence systems have intensively attempted to decode the manuscript using ever more sophisticated methods. Computers have been programmed with every known language, every cipher variation, every possible substitution pattern, and decryption algorithm known to mathematics. Nothing has successfully unlocked the text's hidden meaning, despite centuries of collective effort. Some researchers believe the manuscript to be a detailed medical or botanical treatise, a sophisticated guide to healing practices using unknown plants and cosmic principles connected to celestial positions. Others theorize it represents an elaborate hoax and artistic prank, an intentional creation of meaningless text designed deliberately to confuse and deceive future readers and scholars. Yet a third group speculates it may be documentation of knowledge from a lost civilization, encoded in a script deliberately obscured and made incomprehensible to prevent unauthorized understanding or misuse. The author remains unknown to history, the purpose unclear despite extensive speculation, the content completely inaccessible despite modern cryptographic technology and computational power. If the manuscript documents real and important knowledge, what dangerous secrets does it contain? Why was it encoded so thoroughly and completely that modern science cannot decipher it, despite unprecedented resources? How did someone in the 15th century possess the sophistication to create an apparently unbreakable cipher that has resisted centuries of decryption attempts by geniuses? The Voynich manuscript sits in a library vault under security, still speaking eloquently in a language no living person on Earth can understand. These 10 artifacts, scattered across centuries and continents, separated by vast distances and time, share a common quality that challenges the fundamental boundaries of scientific understanding and historical knowledge. They are not simple hoaxes or fabrications created for deception, yet neither can they be fully explained through conventional means or within accepted scientific frameworks. Some carry curses documented across generations of owners, following patterns too specific and consistent to dismiss as mere coincidence or imagination or selective memory. Others demonstrate technological sophistication and engineering knowledge that predates by centuries or millennia, when such knowledge should have existed, according to conventional chronology. Some contain mysteries encoded so thoroughly and completely that modern civilization cannot decode them despite unprecedented computational resources and artificial intelligence. What unites these objects fundamentally is not that they defy the laws of nature itself, but rather that they reveal the stark limitations of human knowledge and the troubling gaps in our historical understanding of the past. The curse artifacts suggest that belief, concentrated and repeated across centuries with consistency, may create tangible effects and consequences that science has not yet developed the proper tools to measure or explain adequately. The technologically advanced artifacts challenge chronological assumptions about human development and force historians to contemplate the unsettling possibility that human progress was not linear and constant, that knowledge may have been lost and rediscovered cyclically rather than constantly advancing. The undeciphered manuscripts and mysterious objects remind us persistently that not everything created by human intelligence will be understood by future generations, no matter how advanced our technology becomes. Perhaps that is the true terror and wonder these artifacts inspire across centuries. The recognition that the universe and human history contain mysteries we may never fully comprehend or explain, that some knowledge remains forever beyond our reach. The real curse may not reside within the objects themselves, but in our cultural assumption that all mysteries can eventually be solved, all unknowns eventually known, all ancient confusion eventually clarified and explained by science. These 10 artifacts stand as defiant monuments to what remains unknown and unknowable, standing in resistance against the modern insistence and arrogance that nothing escapes the reach of empirical investigation and logical analysis.